All right, here we go. Take one. The pain that families face isn't something that isn't thought much about by the loved ones who abuse drugs. Those that use have lost full control of themselves, but sadly, they have full control over the emotions and behavior of those that love them. Parents sacrifice their time, their energy, and their existence to focus on another person and raise them to the best of their ability. Unfortunately, the person that has been focused on tends to lack any appreciation, and they feel entitled, as what I define in my book as the ability to metaphorically nail the parents to a cross for an excruciating sacrifice. Not all stories end in tragedy. I was able to step out, but for many years I thought, and I'm sure my parents wouldn't have been surprised if they had to bury me. Now, I'm very excited to introduce to my listeners an amazing woman who dealt with that fear of losing her daughter. She's the author of a book that I'm going to have an opportunity to tell you about, although she'll actually have an opportunity to tell you about. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. I am ready to get high. And this is Eric McCoy. Welcome back to High While Clean. Love is a very, unique term in defining it. Is it a feeling defined as an emotional state or a reaction? Maybe an emotion as a state of mind deriving from one's circumstances or mood. Now, I want to say real quick that the problem with those are that they come and go and they change and aren't factually based. But love can't work that way. We know that the part of the brain where our emotional control is located within our limbic system, which is a piece of the old part of the brain. We tend to identify love most often with euphoria, but that isn't the only emotion that we feel that's tied to love. We do know that other feelings are created based on love. Ecstasy, compassion, surprise, anxiety, anger, jealousy, despair. We can fly all over the place as we swing from a high to a low, all within love. Love almost has bipolar qualities as a cyclic mood disorder. What about love being defined as a drive? There have been studies within brain scans that have shown where they believe that this motivational drive comes from. Love is a need and a drive. Like all drives, love is orchestrated within this reward system in the old brain where the limbic system is, but also further back in the brainstem. And this is involuntary reflexes like breathing and heart rate. The part of the brain that has no cognitive function, which may be why it's nearly impossible to control this primitive passion. Maybe this insight can actually help us understand why love gets removed from the equation when we're abusing drugs. It also can cause us to see the real correlation with the dependency on the need for love. If that part of the brain sounds familiar, it's because it should be, and I've talked about it many times. The primitive and old part of the brain is where drugs and alcohol and all behavioral addictions have their effect. If drugs hijack that part of the brain, that drug almost seems to become love. And since our brain has limits, love for others may get tossed aside. Think about that. Now, my guest today, I believe, brings love. Her name is Christine Nauman. She's the author of many different books: Faces of Hope, Babies Born on 9/11, Faces of Hope 10 years later, Faces of Hope at 18, Caterpillar Kisses, Christmas Lights, the Novena, and the Believers. She then took her abilities as an author to write a book about her struggles in dealing with a daughter who abused drugs. And the book is called About Natalie, A Daughter's Addiction, A Mother's Love, Finding Their Way Back to Each Other. Now, I have had the opportunity to take a look at the book, and it's good. Natalie, her daughter, and what I really liked is she actually wrote poems that are included in the book, which is really cool. And if any of you guys have seen my book, I actually start every chapter with a poem. Christine, I want to thank you for being a part of this show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Now, obviously, you were an author prior to this book, and you have obviously written a lot of other books. But I have a real quick question for you. One of them being the Novena, right? Are you Catholic?
I am.
Okay, because it is, kind of a devotion of consisting of 9 separate days of prayers or services.
Right.
Now, many families are embarrassed by having a child being addicted to drugs. And this is what I really appreciate about you. And I really like this because you've come forward and you have shared your experience. When did you make this decision?
I decided to write about, I always thought that I'd write about Natalie. And, but I always thought that I would wait until I had a happy ending. I always thought, I'm not going to start the beginning of the book until I know the end of the story. And when we have our happy ending, I'm going to go out there and do it. And I rethought that because I felt so many things, so much shame, so much embarrassment, so many feelings of isolation. And I was really struggling with those. And all of my writing comes from a very deep, heartfelt place. And I thought, what am I doing waiting for a happy ending? Maybe I can reach out to the people that are exactly where I am. They don't have their happy ending, and they're struggling, and they're having all the emotions that I am having. So I decided, with Natalie's permission that day, I thought, well, let me just start and see how this goes. So it was several years ago, and we were in the midst of all of it. And that's when I started to write about Natalie.
I included an entire chapter in the book I wrote, Pain, Failure, and Misery Are the Stepping Stones to Success, to families. And I know, and I've worked with families a lot over the years. I do work in the substance abuse field. And I've found that, whether somebody loses a family member as a result of an overdose or dying and actually having to bury them, or on the flip side of just not knowing where they are,
right,
it's all the same. And you still have those same feelings, except hope. You have hope if obviously you haven't got the news that they passed away.
Right.
What was her thoughts on you writing this book?
Well, you know what? I'm grateful to Natalie because she was all for it. She respected that I had my vantage point. And originally I said, well, let's write this book together. I said, let's write a book together. And I said, I'll write a chapter, you write a chapter. And, that's kind of how we'll do it. And for a minute, we kind of we tried that. And then it wasn't working out. And she said, I don't think I can do this. And I thought, okay, that's all right. I'll carry it on. And then she surprised me. She said, I can give you some poetry. And to prove that you never really know your child, I said, poetry. I didn't know you were a poet. And she said, oh, I can do poetry. And I thought, okay, if you think you can. And then she, you could have knocked me over because I think her poetry is absolutely brilliant, and it's raw and it's real. and it's just authentic, and it just makes I think it makes a good book so much better with what she has written. She definitely outshines me.
Yeah, that really shows too how, again, drug abusers are not stupid people. And
Exactly.
one of the things that we do gain out there in doing what we do is a lot of creativity. You have to have that.
Yes.
If we took the negative and we flipped it to a positive, obviously the negative being we're very creative in making, we can figure out ways to get money to make sure that we get the drugs, and do everything that we need to do that. But once we get clean and sober, maybe we can flip that creativity into something positive, which is exactly what she did.
Yes.
How many times has she been in rehab?
Well, she has been in outpatient rehab probably more times than I can count. Maybe, yeah, I mean, more times than I can count. We did lots of outpatient rehab. She has been in inpatient rehab, I'm going to say 4 times, with varying degrees of success, I guess.
One question that I do, and I was really thinking about this, where do you cross the line between helping and enabling?
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and be honest. I think I'm way across the line. I think I enable. I do. I mean, I don't mean to. I try not to. I think I know what enabling is, and I think I'm not doing it until somebody reminds me that that's enabling, and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing it again. I think, in my own defense, I think it's natural for mothers to enable, and I think it's natural for people who love that addict to do that. So I try not to, but I don't always succeed.
Yeah, that kind of goes back to why I was, kind of starting this whole thing on love. Love is one of the most powerful, I think, emotion or drives that we ultimately have, and it is something that I think that's not doesn't even really sit on a cognitive level, not thinking
Right.
about it. And enabling is, again, I've worked with a lot of people over the years that enabling can be dangerous.
For sure.
I've told families before that you're killing your kid, by continuing that process and stuff. Now, you obviously, in your case so far, it has actually worked. It's been, she's got a couple of years now. And I wanted to mention, again, I sort of said this before, but I did have an opportunity to speak to your daughter, which was an amazing conversation that we had. And I kind of learned a lot from her, through that conversation that we had. And she seemed like a great woman.
Oh, she is. She is. And that's part of the reason I wrote the book.
Yeah, and she's got 2 years now, right?
She does. She does, which is, yay, Natalie. That's amazing.
Yeah. So despite your enabling, she got.
Yeah, in spite of me.
Did she go through a residential last time, or was it still just an outpatient, or?
Residential.
She did. Okay. And that was the first residential?
No, she's been in probably, I guess, probably 3 times, 3 or 4 times.
You're an enabler.
Thank you.
But that's the thing, though. I mean, like, we never know where the end's going to go. That's the scary, or the uncertainty behind it. You made decisions that, a lot of people would define as enabling, and it did pan out for you. Then of course you have other people that it doesn't pan out for.
Right. And I've seen both. Yeah. And I think I don't just do what you can live with, because we have watched like the ultimate tough love work, and then we have stood at caskets at funeral homes where it didn't. So no answers here for me, that's for sure.
Yeah. Now, she said something that really got me interested. And I don't know if she's talked to you about this, but I actually even talked to her a little bit about her coming on my show. And it has to do with methadone,
right?
Harm reduction. Now, for all of my listeners out there, and I know you haven't heard any of my podcasts yet, but I'm a firm believer in harm reduction. And it always discourages me, as you know, I see a lot of people in the recovery world that aren't, and they tell people that, oh, if you're on methadone, you're not really clean,
Right.
and I can't personally stand that, because it's not really my place to say. I mean, why would I say that, no, don't do this? If it's working, do it. I mean, that's my premise on the thing,
Right.
And so what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I can tell you that our original thoughts, my husband and I, original thoughts were no methadone, no, clean is clean is clean, and you need to be clean, and that means off of everything, and done deal. And Natalie was the one who said, I think this is my path. I think this is my way out of this nightmare. And we supported her, but we didn't agree with her. We supported her because we didn't know what else to do, and nothing else was working. But she really, I mean, she knew herself, and she did a lot of the legwork. I mean, she got herself into the clinic, she got herself through the process, and she was right. It works for her.
Why do you think she started drugs?
You know what? I think there were so many reasons. I mean, I think she has a very I don't know if this sounds silly or not. She has a curious personality. I mean, she just has that little bit of that curious personality. She's very she's always looking for the next challenge. She's always looking for the next. She never had she didn't have an appropriate amount of fear of like anything. But I believe that there were things that I didn't see. I mean, I think she's always struggled with some anxieties and some depressions, and I think that she experienced a lot of bullying and some low self-esteem and not really fitting in types of things. And I think, I mean, they're so, even though they're so young, I think they realize that people do self-medicate and pills and things like that. And I think in a lot of ways, I think she started off trying to make herself feel better.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get into drugs as a self-medicating. I want to, if I get her on my show, I want to ask her that same question too. We'll see how similar the answer is.
Yes.
Because
yes.
Sometimes the parents will define it as like peer pressure or certain various things. Then you got the kids that are going to define it, I just want to have fun.
Right. Right.
But
right.
she may actually be at a place to where she can define a little bit more.
Right.
If you ask like a 17 or a 16-year-old, that's typically what they'll say. But she's 20. How old is she?
24.
24. Okay.
Yeah.
The younger you are, the more difficult it is to get clean and to stay clean. And so, I mean, even with her, going to the multiple different rehabs, and I'm not sure what the youngest she was when she did it, it is difficult,
Right.
because you're invincible, everything.
Oh yeah, definitely. Definitely.
You can't tell me anything,
Oh, for sure. For sure. And, and to have us, I mean, me particularly, so in the dark with so much of it. I was not a messenger. I could not be a messenger for Natalie because it was, I mean, she would say, well, what do you know? And I really didn't have an answer for that, because what did I know? And I didn't know. So
did you ever get into drugs when you were younger?
I didn't.
Never tried any of them? Or
no?
Well, you're one of those unique people. A lot of people try, but then they stop. That actually goes to the question of, for the people that do and they are able to stop, why were they able to stop? Why do some of the people get addicted and are unable to, and other people are not able to? And again, there's a lot of theories behind that. When was it that you were able to identify that she was on drugs? Well, what happened that you were able to see it?
Well, I mean, she started taking pills out of her grandparents' medicine cabinet when she was 12. Now, I mean, I didn't even know that was a thing. I should have known that was a thing. I didn't know that was a thing. And I think she did that for quite some time. But I mean, I did what a lot of people do. I ignored, and I mean, there were signs and signs and signs, but the big moment was when I got a call from the school that said, she's in trouble and she's in significant trouble. And I mean, she was in her first year of high school. I had never been called from the school in all those years. And I mean, never once. And I was, we went flying up there and they said she was caught with heroin. And that was, the moment where it was there. That we had to face it, but then, I'd love to say, oh, from that moment on, we faced it, and but I did, what I think a lot of people do. I just went rushing towards denial. I mean, I just embraced denial for all it was worth. And oh my, no, they're wrong. They're making a big deal out of nothing. Oh, it wasn't hers. Oh, I mean, I went everywhere, and I hung on to that for a while. But shortly after that, kind of broke the news to myself, and with my husband's help, saying, no, it's her, and this is where we are.
Yeah, I'm wondering if you kind of went through all those stages of grief and loss,
Absolutely.
the denial, the anger, the bargaining, the depression. And now you're at that stage of acceptance, though.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I mean, obviously, if you don't get there, you're never going to get anywhere. But no, but I embraced all the stages. I mean, I went through every one, and they got me to where I needed to be, I guess.
Yeah, I guess it's the grief and loss of the lack of her innocence.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
But she's healthy. So she came out with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, she's healthy.
And she didn't obviously run into everything that we're seeing today with fentanyl being cut with. Did she have an overdose, or?
She's had a couple overdoses, or she had a couple overdoses in the past. Yeah, I mean, she did, fentanyl was one of her drugs of choice. So, I mean, truly, she's lucky to be alive. I think she just did, just so many risky things, and she's lucky for the moment to be on the other side of it.
Yeah, she's a miracle,
Mm-hmm.
like all of us that sort of get through it, we're survivors.
Yes.
We all kind of fall into that category as survivors. You're a survivor too, having to have gone through that, and the trauma and the, the worries and the depression and the, oh my God, what's going to happen to her? Where's she going to be? Am I going to have to bury her?
Right.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
But here you are today. What was the clear reason you wrote the book?
Oh, a couple reasons. I mean, I really wanted, I knew all that I felt, like, you said, the shame, the embarrassment, the isolation, all of that. I wanted to see if I could reach out to other parents and say, you know what, you're not alone. I mean, I unfortunately, you're not alone, but you have too much company in this, and maybe, you don't have to be so shamed and so embarrassed, and it happens to everybody. It's not just, something that happens to bad people. And, I mean, it doesn't all make sense. And also, the stigma attached to what people who are suffering from addiction are. I always say to everybody when they hear Natalie's resume, where she's been and what she's done, and I'll say, but you know what? If she were sitting right here, you'd like her. And I think sometimes that's missed. I think people do have that stereotypical idea. And, I wanted people to know that, addicts are valuable cherished people. They are loved ones. They are, sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters, and then the little boy next door and the little girl in church and all of that. And I just know the amazing person that Natalie is. So I wanted to present her to the world and say, look at all her wonderfulness. And yes, she's an addict too. And I wanted people to realize that probably what you're thinking is not what it is.
And thank you for doing that, because this is one of the things that I'm always presenting out there, is that if people that are abusing drugs, abusing alcohol, have kind of walked over that path, if they get out there and they'd raise their hand and say, hey, I had a problem, this is me today, I think people would realize the numbers are a lot bigger than we're aware of.
Right.
And I do believe that we're at a point, or we're about to be at a point, where it's going to affect every single person, whether it be the person abusing drugs or the families
right
that are having to deal with this, or the friends that are having to deal with this. And so the more that we can all stand up, and I agree that, drug addicts are not bad people, I mean, you have your exceptions out there, that kind of go a little crazy, but they're not typically bad people. They get clean and sober. We have to separate the difference between the behaviors and who the person actually is.
Absolutely.
And just like I said, I've spoken to your daughter, and she seems like a beautiful woman, that has a fantastic heart, cares, loves her mother to death. And, and I think that her motivation, I think, is, I think, in the right place to a certain extent, as has goals, she has that she's moving towards. What is she doing right now?
She is getting ready to go back to community college. She would like to study education. I think she's toying between she's touring between kind of preschool, kindergartenish type things, and then on the other hand, she thinks that maybe after a little bit of time passes, she'd like to help people like herself.
Fantastic. We can use her.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that motivation, and I've talked about this many times, the motivation, I love my mother, that's a temporary motivation, because we can't base things off of other people. But when we're able to have those goals, have those dreams, have those visions, this is where I'm going, I'm doing it for me, I'm doing it for what I want,
right,
versus what others want for me. And so that's where I think she is sitting in the right direction,
right. And that's the only reason she's in this place that she is, because I mean, I wanted it, long before she did. And that was, I just kept trying to stuff it down her throat. And, I did all the things that, moms do, whether they're right or whether they're wrong. I mean, I cried, I screamed, I begged, I pleaded, I threatened. None of it worked. And it was until she said, you know what, and I tried. I remember, want it for me, but that they don't want it for, that's not how it works.
Yeah, and kind of going back to the younger the people are, when they're still having fun, that's when it's hard.
Right.
When they define it as, I'm still having fun. Once it no longer becomes fun, sadly, that's when people are really dependent and they're really hooked on it. And so it is harder to get off of. But at the same time, sometimes that's when they realize that, well, this is the wrong path for me.
Exactly.
So she obviously hit that point, which is good.
Thank God. Thank God it didn't. I often worried that it was going to be too late.
Yeah. Now, methadone is, is one of the most controversial, obviously, with a lot of people, because, it is very difficult to get off of. And with a lot of people, or some people, that get on maintenance programs, harm reduction type stuff, some of them do reach a place to where, okay, I do want to eventually get off this stuff,
Right.
Methadone is one of the harder ones to get off of. Withdrawal is long. But yeah, I'm glad that she is where she is. I mean, that's fantastic that she's got 2 years, and I personally, if she doesn't abuse it, she
Mhm.
takes it as she's supposed to, then
Mhm.
she's in that realm of recovery,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And to me, that's important. The sad part is 12-step programs don't embrace it.
Yes, you're right. Yeah.
And so I don't know. What does she do? Do you know what she does for her recovery?
I don't occasionally meetings. Um, she does see private therapists and doctors. Um, but that's kind of her story to tell, and she's kind of in charge of she's more in charge of that than I am.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and and to me, again, if as long as we are doing things to improve ourselves, and that's sort of the way I
Yes.
see it, then that is recovery, and that's what she's in. She's in a recovery mode and a recovery process, and so I really do wish that people would sort of break away from that hatred towards that and that stigma
Right.
behind that, because and it is sad with the 12-step program. I mean, realistically, you know, and again, and I've talked about it many times. I don't do the 12-step myself, but
Hmm.
I have my own recovery that I do. And but the 12-step program is by far the best self-help program out there, and it really sucks, that
But they don't.
they don't really embrace that idea.
Hmm.
Now, smart recovery is a different story. I don't know if you know anything about smart recovery, but that's also a self-help. There's the drawback behind that. There's not as many meetings, and
Okay.
it's a little harder to find. They have a lot of online stuff. I love the concepts. It's based on Albert Ellis's rational emotive behavioral therapy, which is the form of cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's done as a self-help kind of
Hmm.
model, and I think it's great personally, and I know a lot of people that embrace that, and they're not ones that are going to have a hatred for what she's doing,
Okay.
because they're more just about let's improve ourselves, let's better ourselves. It's not a higher powered program like the 12-step
Hmm.
program, and they kind of believe God makes those that make themselves, so
Right. Right.
they
Okay.
don't
Good for them.
they don't dispute God, but they just
Right.
um so yeah, I mean, that's just an alternative of something she could look at. But if
Right.
she's in therapy, I believe that the things that people get from the 12-step program are as a support system, and so hopefully she has that.
Hmm.
Spirituality, and so hopefully she has some sense of improving upon yourself. But you can find those outside the 12-step program. So
Right. Exactly.
and so what are your hopes for her?
Oh gosh. My hopes for her um are obviously, health. Um, but the specifics I am trying to leave. My hopes are for her, or whatever her hopes for her are. And I just want her to find a healthy path and just go after it, because I mean, I know I'm biased, but she's an amazing girl, and she just has so many gifts and so much that she could offer to so many people. I definitely want her to go into something with people, because that's her strength.
Thank you for saying that, because that is part of when we look at what a healthy family is a family that says, you know what, I hope you find your happiness. I hope you find whatever it is that you enjoy and that you embrace. Because sadly, again, there are a lot of families out there that sort of push people to do what they want them to do. And
Right. Yeah.
you're definitely in the healthier line of allowing them to be an individual and choose for
Hmm.
themselves. And so I think that is very, very powerful. Um, so I want to ask you, as I always like to ask everybody, is there something that I haven't brought up that you want to talk about real quick?
Oh, that's a tough one. No, not really. I think we've covered so much. No, just I I hope people take the intention of the book for what it was, a hug and a little bit of understanding and compassion.
And encouragement, right?
Oh, absolutely.
And if you were to say something to the people out there that are struggling,
Mhm.
what would you tell them?
recovery is possible. Just keep on working at it and find your path, find your healthy path. And I do think that as much as it's, I mean, there are certain processes that may lead you there. I think that it's individual, and I think that I think you can find your way if you really look for it enough.
And I want to say this again, and I've said this a couple of times, but for people out there that are struggling, and I know you don't hear this very often, I love you.
Absolutely. Good for you.
And that's something that obviously they don't hear very much, probably.
Right. Yeah, I think you're right.
There are people out there that are trying to fight for you, and you're one of those.
Thank you.
So why don't you give people the information? Where can they get your book?
Okay.
Or maybe contact you if they need to.
Yeah, About Natalie can be found anywhere books are sold, Amazon and otherwise. Best way to reach me would be christinenaiman.com or about Natalie addictioncomfort.com. It's a website I have put up where people can reach out to me, or just kind of as a forum to say what they'd like to say. I would love to hear from people. I would love to hear their stories, and if they reach out to me, I'll reach back, I promise.
Hey, I want to thank everybody for tuning into another episode of High While Clean. As I always like to say, keep getting high, but let's do it clean. Thanks.